I'd like to welcome you to this Improvement Service webinar on the social value of Cosy Kingdom. I'm John Mitchell from the Improvement Service. I want to give you a brief outline of what you'll be hearing today. I'll start with a short overview of who the Improvement Service is, and then we'll hear from our speakers, Bruce McCall from Cosy Kingdom and Karen Carrick from the Improvement Service. We'll then take questions before there's a summing up, and finally, we'll ask for your feedback on the event. But before we get started, here's just a few quick housekeeping points. You're most welcome to stay on camera during the webinar, but if you can mute your mic during the presentations, that would be most appreciated. This session is also being recorded, and we'll share an edited version of it with you in due course. I should also say that you can put any questions in the chat as they occur to you, and we'll get to them in the Q&A at the end. So, who are we? The Improvement Service delivers a range of national improvement programmes for local government in Scotland and supports councils to improve at a local level. It provides leadership to local government and the wider system on improvement and transformation. It delivers capability and capacity for improvement. It delivers a range of national shared service applications and technology platforms. It also brokers additional resources from out with the sector to support the delivery of local government's priorities. And it provides research, data and evaluation to inform policymaking and decision-making. I'd now like to introduce our first speaker, Bruce McCall, Service Delivery Manager at Cosy Kingdom, to explain who they are and what they do. Bruce, I think it's over to you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us this morning, everyone. My name is Bruce McCall, and I'm the Service Delivery Manager here at Greener Kirkcaldy. My role at Greener Kirkcaldy is to coordinate the Cosy Kingdom Energy Advice Service, and I'll just tell you all about that this morning. So Greener Kirkcaldy, we're based in Kirkcaldy, and we're a community-led charity and development trust who work on a local scale to benefit the community and the environment. We give advice and support to help people reduce fuel bills, grow or cook with seasonal local food, reduce waste and car use. And we're based at East Fergus Place in Kirkcaldy. And we're the lead partner in the Cosy Kingdom Energy Advice Service, which we're here to talk about today. Now, Cosy Kingdom. We're a free and impartial home energy advice service, and that is key to us. So no matter who we're funded by, we're always impartial and we're free to anyone living in Fife, and that's all to all tenures within Fife. My colleague Darren always coined a lovely phrase that we will deliver energy advice to anyone from caravans to castles. So that kind of lets everybody know exactly what we do throughout Fife. We're delivered in partnership, so Greener Kirkcaldy lead the partnership and deliver in 5 of the 8 local areas in Fife, basically from Leven over to the Kincardine Bridge, St Andrews Environmental Network, pick up Glenrothes and North East Fife, and we've got a really strong partnership with Citizens Advice and Rights Fife, who will deliver our debt advice, which coordinates really well, as you'll see. It's the umbrella brand, which all of us, when we deliver our energy advice, that project is always delivered under Cosy Kingdom. Our funders that we have include Fife Council, Fife Housing Group, British Gas Energy Trust, SGN and Climate Action Fife through the National Lottery. We have 16 funders overall for this year. Our aims and objectives. The climate emergency, we deliver the climate-friendly home strand of Climate Action Fife. And Climate Action Fife is a Fife-wide partnership of public and third sector organisations working to tackle the climate emergency. The climate-friendly homes visits focus on thermal imaging surveys, advice on saving energy, and advice on energy efficiency and home retrofit. Fuel poverty, around 34% of all homes in Fife are in fuel poverty, fluctuating up and down. Reducing fuel poverty is a national and local priority. We deliver within the fuel poverty strategy, the plan for Fife, the local housing strategy, and the LHE's, the local house heat and energy efficiency strategy. Cosy Kingdom works closely with Fife Council to deliver the fuel poverty strategy. For our energy advice, our energy advisors can provide support in a range of areas, which is dealing with bills, meters, and energy suppliers, saving energy around the home, tackling energy efficient homes, dealing with drafts, condensation and dampness, and support to access grants and funding. We also have our handy service. Our handy service is a free means-tested handy service for eligible households. The eligibility, you either have to be in fuel poverty or have a couple of benefits. And last year alone, we delivered about 91% of the people that visited us were in fuel poverty. So roughly 9 out of 10 people were qualifying automatically for a handy service. And that was all assessed by our energy advisors. The measures that we can install free of charge are our LED bulbs, thermal curtains, radiator panels, small draft proofing measures, microwaves, electric throws and cosy packs, which are all very welcome in these cold homes. We have our boiler and servicing and repair scheme. The Boiler Repair Fund, which is funded by Fife Council, supports households to repair or replace a faulty heating system, and it's only when they're not eligible for statutory schemes. So outside your Warmer Home Scotland scheme, who we are one of the larger referrers into that scheme as well. We have our safe and warm servicing scheme as well, where we're servicing boilers where people can't afford to service those boilers themselves, supporting vulnerable homeowners to service their gas appliances. Our income maximisation, which is the Citizens Advice and Rights Fife part of our organisation, direct referrals to specialist advisors through our energy advisors here at Cosy Kingdom, and they will check on free benefit entitlement checks, income maximisation advice, support with budgeting, and advice on debt issues. With both our energy advice and our citizens advice, we could do that through kind of two manners. We either meet people in the home when they're needing a handheld experience, or we could deliver that over the telephone if we feel that they're quite happy to do that. And it's absolutely up to them for both our energy advice and for citizens advice. We take a holistic approach here at Cosy Kingdom. Fuel poverty does not happen in isolation. We're very aware of that. People experiencing fuel poverty are likely to be dealing with other issues within the homes and their lives, and we regularly refer and signpost to a range of local and national organisations for appropriate support. That's including support with maintaining tenancies, mental health, emergency food provision, furniture and white goods. We use the Fife online referral tracking system and that's got over 200 partners that we can quickly refer into and gives us good outcomes and reports at the back of that as well. We also do events and talks, and they're light touch events. We're just nearing about 200 events that we've done this year so far from April. They do die down traditionally in the winter, but there seems to be still quite a high demand for those. And that's talking to local groups, energy saving workshops, information stalls and drop-ins. And we also maintain an online presence on our website and social media. And we've got some excellent videos on YouTube demonstrating how to do simple things for yourself within the home. A new thing for us this year was our frontline worker training. and that was empowering frontline workers and volunteers to intervene with light touch energy advice. And that's delivered by our energy advisor that you see there, Robert. And it's a 2.5 hour workshop covering fuel poverty, delivering light touch energy advice, and referring for support. Having those quick wins within the homes and is essential for us now, and it lets Cosy Kingdom deal with the more in-depth cases. So frontline workers can deal with simple things that may be registering with a supplier, and then when they come to a barrier where they're not quite sure and they've not got the energy advice, they'll refer into Cosy Kingdom. And that's certainly not that's certainly helped with referrals, but it's certainly helped as far as dealing with those really quick wins within the home and allowing frontline workers to support the Cosy Kingdom service as well. For referrals, if you're referring into the Cosy Kingdom service, they could be made by either telephone or texting, email, or online, or through for the Fife Online referral tracking system. So you could refer in any of those ways for us to get to Cosy Kingdom. Thank you, and I've got that in there, but we'll get any questions at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
It's great, Bruce. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll just now switch presentations. Hopefully everybody can see that. And I'd like to now introduce our second speaker, Karen Carrick, Evaluation Programme Manager at the Improvement Service, who's going to take us through the social return on investment analysis of Cosy Kingdom. Karen, it's over to you.
Thanks very much, John. I've had a few Teams issues, which I no doubt will be a familiar story for most of you. So John's very kindly offered to share my slides this morning. I've actually had some problems actually getting into meetings that I've organised, but we won't go there. Enough Teams trauma for the day. So Bruce has very clearly outlined the range of activities that Cosy Kingdom provides. What we tried to do with the social return on investment analysis was to look at them in a bit more detail, to think about who benefited and to put a financial value on that. So I won't go into anything that Bruce has already covered. We have produced a report on this, that the front cover is there before you, but what I would say is that any social return on investment analysis is stakeholder informed. And by that, I mean it reflects the benefits as experienced by individual stakeholders. It's not something that is done purely by research. It's something that requires engagement in some shape or form with stakeholders. At the end of this process, a report is produced and it contains a range of information. There will be some background research, there will be both quantitative and qualitative data, and there will also be a ratio. And I've got to say something about the ratio because people tend to focus on that. They tend to say that you need to have a high ratio. You don't necessarily. The ratio is really just illustrative of the benefits, of what financial benefits the investment will return. In this case, it's quite high and there's a reason for that, but it does mean that you can't compare it with other ratios. What's probably more useful in this is that it enables you to look at the values of separate outcomes and to see which outcomes are having the greatest value for both the people who are experiencing them and also in financial terms. Next slide, please, John. So social return on investment is a process. It's, as I've said, it's about measuring change and putting a financial value on it. And it allows you to measure, as probably most of you know, and put a value on things that traditionally have not been possible to put a financial value on. By that, I mean perhaps some of the softer outcomes like improved health, well-being. It's much harder to value that than it is to value cost savings or something that has a very precise financial value that you can immediately identify. Next slide, please. So there's a process. Now, there's a lot of guidance on this. This SRI took us months to complete, so I'm not going to be able to go over the process and all the detail of it in 10, 20 minutes. But really, the stages are here. The first stage is to think about what's the scope, what's it you're measuring. You then need to think about, well, what are you actually investing? What's the input? How much money is going in to deliver these activities? You've then got to think about, well, what is being delivered and who's benefiting from them, who are your stakeholders, and how many of those stakeholders are actually benefiting as well. You need to think about what's going to change, what the outcomes are going to be for those separate stakeholders, and then think about how you will know. So you need to have some form of measurement of some sort of indicators to demonstrate that what you think will change has actually changed. And to do that, you need to think about, well, what information do we need to collect? What data methodologies are you going to adopt? What are you going to do to evidence that the things that you think will happen have actually happened? You then have to think about identifying what we would call financial proxy. By that, I mean you need to monetize that change. So you need to put a financial value on it. Having done that, you need to think about the impact of what's happened. And to do that, there are different elements that are involved in calculating impact. So you need to think about what would have happened anyway. It could well have been that regardless of your intervention, there would have been the change. You need to think about what else might have contributed, and also perhaps what stopped happening elsewhere. So these are the processes that you need to go through in some detail and with robust evidence to demonstrate that you are in a position to calculate the ratio of investment to benefits. Next slide, please, John. So if we can think first of all about who benefited in Fife. The starting point for any social return on investment analysis is to think about your stakeholders. So the stakeholders, the key stakeholders that we identified were individuals living in Fife and organisations who were able to participate in the training or the referral processes that Bruce has already outlined. We did identify other stakeholders, but we decided that we wouldn't be able to evidence the change that took place for them. By that, I mean there's likely to be a benefit for public sector, public services, for friends and family of the individuals. But at this stage, we felt that we couldn't include them in the social return on investment analysis. So you always have a list of your main stakeholders and other stakeholders who you think might benefit, but it's either difficult to prove or it's not going to be a significant benefit. So the two that we've got here are the individuals living in Fife, both the ones who received energy advice and the ones who were able to access the handy service, and Fife organisations. And we looked at them from both a national and a local perspective. As Bruce has said, one of the main areas that have been developed by Cosy Kingdom is providing training for staff and volunteers in other organisations. Next slide, please. So we then had to find out, well, what's changed for them. In any social return on investment analysis, you have an idea about what you think will change, and that tends to be based on existing research or on conversations or on results of focus groups. But there needs to be some sort of engagement strategy or process for actually reaching out to individuals. So our engagement strategy is summarised there. As you will see, for the individuals, we saw them as being the main beneficiaries, unsurprisingly, of Cosy Kingdom's activities. And we tackled that in two ways. We had, to make sure that we had identified all the outcomes, we started off with a bit of a more in-depth discussion with a smaller group that enabled us to produce a larger survey that could go out to a bigger group. So you'll see there that there are different processes that we used to make sure that we were able to capture all the potential changes that individuals or organisations might experience. Next slide, please. So maybe then if I can go through some of the changes that we identified. Now, as you will see there, not all individuals will experience the change. There tends to be a percentage that will receive the change, and unless you can actually reach everybody And that's almost impossible, particularly when you've got a cohort of this size or a group of this size. What you need to do is have a robust enough number that you've contacted to identify the changes, but that you can scale up to map out what's likely to change for everybody who was able to access the service. So the outcomes that we identified are there. Obviously, people had improved health and well-being because of living in warmer homes and being less stressed about energy costs. So out of everybody who got advice, we scaled up that there would be roughly 1,800. Interestingly enough, more people, significantly more people, had increased awareness, understanding, confidence to use energy more effectively. So that's very positive and reflects the fact that this is advice that's available, as Bruce has said, to anybody in Fife, from their caravan to their castle. What we didn't expect, though, was that individuals were able to avoid becoming homeless as a result of getting energy advice. And this was an unexpected outcome. There's always unexpected outcomes when you start this process and you actually start talking to people. Obviously, individuals also said that they got the help earlier, and a significant number, the most common response was they had increased their available household income. This happened in two ways. There was the support that was provided by CARF, enabling people to claim additional benefits to which they were entitled, but also the kind of goods and grants that Bruce has referred to as well. Next slide, please. So, as I said at the start, the process reflects both quantitative data, which you've heard about, and qualitative data too. And I'll give you a few seconds just to read the quotes that we got from people when they talked about the changes that they'd experienced. So, as well as changes for individuals, there were significant changes for organisations both nationally and Fife, and Fife-wide. So the outcomes that were experienced are set out there. Staff and volunteers in organisations across Fife were able to access training and support in basic energy and provision, and that helped their skills and understanding. There was also several organisations said that Cosy Kingdom worked with people that they would like to work with but couldn't reach. So the partnership or the work with Cosy Kingdom enabled them to reach out and engage with other groups, primarily vulnerable or priority groups. There was also a suggestion that the service that organisations offered could be improved because they were making referrals to a trusted organisation to access expert energy advice and support. And organisations talked about how this saved a significant amount of time, because for many of them, dealing with energy advice wasn't something they did on a daily basis. It happened occasionally, and it took up a lot of staff time, both in thinking about how they were going to deal with the problem, but actually in resolving the problem, because they didn't have the contacts and experience that energy advisors in Cosy Kingdom have. National organisations also said that it would cost them a lot more if they had to provide the services offered by Cosy Kingdom, and they recognised the value of the work that was done, both in terms of saving them money, but also in terms of Cosy Kingdom having the relationships and contacts to be able to reach out to people. Next slide, please. There's some quotes from organisations on this one. And you can see there that one organisation said it could take them a day to sort out a problem with an energy supplier. Next slide, please. So as I've talked about, in calculating impact, you need to think about other factors too. So the factors that we need to talk about are dead weight, so what would have happened anyway. Thinking about this is that it could be that people would have got energy advice or know more about how to manage their energy if they hadn't been to Cosy Kingdom. And we've also got to think about what other factors will have contributed. There's a difference between contribution and attribution. Attribution means that what the action has directly resulted in something. So for example that I like to give is if you go to the doctor with a chest infection, you get an antibiotic, it should, for most people, cure the chest infection. However, contribution means that it has helped, but it's not had the sole responsibility. So in this case, energy advisors will have contributed to increased knowledge and awareness, but it could be that the government has been running a campaign at that time and people have got information that way. There's also the concept of displacement, which basically means that what you've done means that something's not happening somewhere else. In this case, there's no other organisation in Fife doing this, so there's no question of displacement. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to talk about here are the unexpected outcomes, or the things that I think are worth highlighting. So CARF, Citizens and Rights Fife, will take up the sort of specialist benefit cases. And what we discovered when we looked at, well, what are the financial gains resulting from these? 70% were for attendance allowance. So attendance allowance is claimed by older people. The next most common benefit was pension credit. So I think the message from this that we took away was that it can be quite hard to engage with older people and talk about money, but they are willing to talk about energy advice. And talking about energy advice may be a good conduit, a good route to get older people to talk about other things. And given what's happening at the moment, that's extremely useful. But this also has potential, because if people will use energy advice as a conduit to talk about things that are hard, it could be a route to talk about things like illegal money lending or other areas that people find challenging to talk about. The other thing that I want to talk about is carbon reduction. Now, what we did with this was we looked at, well, what are the benefits for the environment? And the way that we did that was looking at the tons of carbon that are saved directly by the activities that are delivered by Cosy Kingdom. They do this on a routine basis, so they advised us that the carbon in tons that was saved was about 44,000. And on the basis of that, we were able to use the current carbon calculations to put a financial value on it. I would say that the way it was calculated when we did this is being reviewed, and there's always changes in terms of what do you take into account when you're putting a financial value on carbon calculations. So we looked at guidance from business, energy and industrial, and we used the values that were suggested by them. I would also say that, and I will pick this up again, is that benefits from carbon emissions last a long time. At the time we did this, it was suggested that it lasted about 40 years. So this means that the ratio in this case is higher, because the carbon savings last much longer than other outcomes. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. Next slide, please. So the key findings then, what I am keen to emphasise is that there is no alternative organisation providing a similar service in Fife, and people are saying, organisations are saying that it would leave a gap, it would be hard to fill, it would cost more. Bruce has outlined the funders. In total, the investment in Cosy Kingdom is about £1 million in the year that we investigated. I would say that the period that we looked at was from 1st of April 23 to 31st of March 24. So that's the period that all the data that we've collected relates to. Next slide, please. So the ratio. We found that every pound invested would generate about £34 of benefits. What I would say is that when you do a social return on investment calculation, there are two elements to it. So there's, for the £1 million that invested that year, what does that equate to in financial terms for the year under investigation, but recognising that the changes experienced will last longer than a year, not just in the environment, for example, people's knowledge and understanding, that lasts longer than the year that the SRI analysis takes place. You produce what's called a present value and a net value. If we looked purely at the value of Cosy Kingdom in the year that we analysed, it would be about £11. So that doesn't take account of the fact that the benefits are lasting longer term. What we also did was look at, well, what things are we uncertain about? Because in a social return investment analysis, you have to make assumptions, you have to use your best estimates using the evidence that's available, and you test that in what's called a sensitivity analysis, and you vary. For instance, how much the dead weight, how much would have happened anyway, we varied that to get a calculation. And at the end of that, we found that it's better expressed as a ratio between 30 and 36 pounds. It's still quite comforting to know that, you know, there's not a big gap there, that pretty much the evidence that we have seems to be fairly robust in terms of, even if we vary the things that we're uncertain about, there is still that fairly narrow ratio. Next slide, please. So I've given you a very quick overview of the social return on investment analysis and tried to highlight some of the key findings and some of the key things that you need to be aware of when you read the report. But I think it's back to you now, John, for any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Karen. So feel free to put your questions into the chat or just raise your hand. Feeling that, just dive in. Oh, we've got one already from Robert, and he's asking, can the 70% of financial gains through AA recorded by CARF be fully attributed to Cosy Kingdom intervention, or rather through CARF's wider income intervention work?
I'll just answer that if that's okay, Karen. So that's based on basically the worker that we have, Robert. We do the referrals into CARF, so it's the information that we gave over to business improvements is solely as a percentage for the worker that we gave, which is Kerry. That makes sense.
Bruce, it's very impressive. Are you able to? I can speak to you separately, Bruce, but it'd be useful to be able to quantify that in terms of money amounts as well.
Yes, I can speak to you offline, Robert, no problem.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. Just a few more questions in the chat. Elizabeth is asking who funded this piece of work.
Fife Council funded it.
Thanks, Bruce. Other questions? Saskia, I hope we've pronounced your name correctly, is asking Karen, you said a bit more about your calculations relating to the value of carbon savings. I don't know if you've got anything further to say on that one.
So that data was collected by Greener Kirkcaldy for Cosy Kingdom. As I've said, they calculated that as a result of the activities of Cosy Kingdom, carbon savings would equate to about 44,000 tonnes of CO2 per year. So what we did was we looked at what the valuation is given by BEIS in relation to what's the financial value. They have a website that advises as to what you should use. Generally, there's a range that you can use in terms of valuations that you want to apply to each tonne of carbon that's saved. We used ones at the lower end, but that's essentially what we used. We used the guidance from BEIS, and we used the savings that had been identified by Greener Kirkcaldy on behalf of Cosy Kingdom.
That's great. Thanks very much, Karen. Craig is asking, so the £34 gain is longer term, if I understand. Does that mean financial gains from future years would be less as they couldn't double up on these long-term savings?
So what this is demonstrating is that for your £1 million that you're investing in one financial year, you will save that financial year, but you will continue in future financial years to benefit from that investment. So that's essentially what's showing. Yes, there will be drop-off in terms of how long the benefits of each of the outcomes or the changes last. So for instance, in terms of the long-term benefits of the environment, it will drop off each year. In terms of knowledge, awareness and understanding, again, that will drop off. It won't continue at the same level in future years. So yes, that's factored into the calculation.
Thanks very much, Karen. Alison is asking, what would you see the value of this evaluation and allocation of financial returns in relation to creating similar services in other areas of the country, given the individual details aspect? And Robert has supplemented that by saying he's happy to comment on the value of this work to Fife Council.
I suppose for other organisations, what it does is it shows you how the approach that's been adopted by Cosy Kingdom, who benefits and how they benefited, and that might influence or help people who want to develop similar services in other areas. Now, on a cautionary note, what I would say is each area is unique, each SRI is unique. All this does is, if you like, add to the bank of knowledge and information that's available, and you can take from it what's useful to apply to your own situation, but it is very much contextual.
Thank you very much. Saskia's got a follow-up question, I think, on funding. Did Fife Council fund both the Cosy Kingdom Advice Service and this evaluation work? And she's also saying to Robert, she'd love to know what motivated you to support the evaluation work, and did you have a particular stakeholders in mind? So I think that's probably directed to Karen and Robert, who's on the call.
I'll pass to Robert.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Karen. Yeah, there's no real rocket science in this. You know, it's quite a straightforward response. And yes, Saskia, we fund both the advice service, or at least we are one of the funders for the advice service, and as well as evaluation work. So, you know, as a key stakeholder in the area, the council is very much concerned with the range and scope and depth of the fuel poverty support we collectively provide to tenants and residents throughout the area. But what we need to do is get under the skin of what actually makes a difference to people. So, you know, we have a tendency as an organization, which others do too, of counting the widgets, if you like, the inputs. So we have a good understanding of the volumes of those inputs. We have a lesser understanding of what difference it actually makes to people. And if we've got constrained resources and a large area to cover, we've got to understand what interventions work and what don't. So this kind of deep dive into service provision really helps with that. And that's ever more the case as resources are more and more constrained. So looking to the future, we're going to have to better plan out not only which communities we focus most on, but what interventions we apply in those communities. So that's really the nuts and bolts of it. I don't know if that helps, or whether you've got any other questions. Now, you know, key to all of this is the idea that certainly in Fife we work in partnership, and you know there's a transparency between what Cosy does and what we do and what other organisations do. So it's a real collective effort. So we need to make strong decisions on who does what and how we overlap or don't. Happy to take any follow-on questions.
That's great, Robert. Thank you very much for that. I'm just saying, do we have any? We've got a few more questions. Alison's got a couple of additional questions. She's just saying in general terms how much this kind of evaluation costs.
So, in the improvement service, as John said, we work with local authorities and the community planning partners. We do these kind of evaluations on a commercial basis, but what we will charge will be dependent on what we think is the potential value to the wider local authority family in terms of what we do. So I can't give you a number for this, but if it's something that you want to talk about, want to discuss, my email address will be at the end of the presentation, and get in touch with me. We can talk about what it is you want to do, and that would influence what it costs.
That's great. And Alison's giving a thumbs up there. Do we have any further questions? Alison's got one final question, which I'll address at the end. Anyone else? Okay, I think that might be us. So Alison's final question is the physical report publicly available? And yes, we do have a report. It's virtually available, maybe not physically available in terms of a hard copy. And I'll post a link into the chat there, which directs you to our website, and that's the full SROI. That should, if that link is not available just yet, it will be made available and made live this afternoon. So by all means, come back to that. Okay.
Sorry, John, we'll also be making it publicly available in Cosy Kingdom potentially tomorrow, I would say, if anybody wanted to go on the Cosy Kingdom website to have a look for it as well.
That's great, Bruce. We can also share a link out in a follow-up email if you want us to do that. This slide says, obviously, for more information, you can obviously contact Karen or Bruce. Now, just before we finish up, it would be great if you could tell us what you think about this event, this presentation. There's a link there to a very short survey form. It'd be appreciated if you could take a few minutes just to fill that in. I'll just give you a second to click on that. You can also scan that QR code if you want to do it on your phone. What I should say is, I think Karen gave you the opportunity to do some summing up. I think we have that. Well, we don't have that as a final slide. So if there's any final comments from Karen or Bruce before we wrap up.
I'm sure Bruce might want to say something too, but really just to thank you all for coming along and showing the interest in this piece of work. When you've read the report, there's much more detail in the report. It could well be that you've got other questions that you want answered or you want to discuss. If you do, please don't hesitate to get in touch. The email address was on the previous slide. Slides will be shared with you, so feel free to get in touch with me. But also to say that it's been a pleasure to work with Cosy Kingdom and Bruce, and I'd really like to thank them for asking us to do such an interesting and informative piece of work and being such great colleagues to work with.
Thank you, Karen. I'll just put my here just to thank Fife Council for obviously supplying the funding to allow us to do this. It's been a really useful and informative exercise, and you guys have been great to work alongside. It's been a long and tough process at times, but we've got there, and also to everyone who engaged with us. I know they're not on this call, but there was a lot of people that came forward, which was fantastic, because I always feel that's the tricky bit to try and get people to speak about the service once they've had it. But it was great work overall. So thank you very much, guys.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Bruce and Karen. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for coming along to this webinar. and for posing your questions, some of them quite challenging to our speakers, I think. And I hope we can make it along to some of our future events. We'll be publishing those on our website in due course. But thanks again, and take care.